Hello, thank you for joining me on my channel today, Gary's Little Corner of Information. Today I am going to be comparing a bully to an advocate. Now, when you were in school, I'm sure, like most of us, you at least walked by a larger kid or a group of kids who were picking on a smaller child. And I think all of us have at least seen that one or more times if we haven't been the victim of being a bully ourselves. And in a school setting, it's usually the smaller child that gets bullied and picked on. A bully would never pick on anybody who had the capacity and ability to fight back. Um, Often, bully shows up with other kids and they may participate or they just might laugh. And if you stood up for the kid against the bully, and at that point you could consider yourself an advocate. An advocate's a good thing. But bullying itself, isn't isolated just to school children. Bullying activity can come from other sources, like our government. Uh, the government can bully groups of people or individuals, just as well as bullying school can. For example, recently there have been a ton of laws passed that were attempting to inhibit the transgendered people. A bully is someone who uses their power, their influence, or aggression to intimidate, dominate, or harm others. Now, bullying could take many forms. It could take physical violence. It could be verbal abuse. It could be emotional manipulation. And it could be social exclusion from the groups of people you might be running with. Uh, so it's not unheard of uh, for a child who's been bullied on or a person who's been bullied on to commit suicide. It's not unheard of. It's sad, but not unheard of whenever somebody comes to feel like that's their only way to escape. Uh, it's not unusual in itself for a bully to come from an unstable environment themselves at home. Maybe they have older brothers or older siblings in general that are picking on them in the home setting, or maybe their parents are bullies. And that's what they are portraying to their child, that this is the way to behave and to act. Um, Whether the government is perceived as being a bully, um, depends on specific actions, policies, and the perspective of those affected by the bullying. And here are some scenarios where the government might be considered a bully. So, authoritarian tactics, if the government uses force or intimidation to silence dissent, suppress opposition, or control the media, then this might be a form of bullying its citizens. You can see this happening in countries like the Soviet Union. You can see it in China. You can see it in North Korea. I think North Korea might be the worst of all of them. Mm. And so, discrimination. So, if certain groups are targeted and marginalized by their government policies and practices, that government could be seen as using their powers unfairly. International pressure. On the global stage, a government might actually be labeled as a bully if they use harsh economic, military, political pressures uh, in order to coerce other nations into compliance with their agenda. Excessive policing or surveillance. If the government wants to impose heavy surveillance, aggressive policies, harsh penalties, and disappropriate uh, affecting certain communities, it could be seen as overstepping its bounds. in a way that could be interpreted as bullying. However, it's important to consider the context and rationale behind government action. Sometimes measures that seem harsh or coercive might be implemented for the sake of national security, public safety, and other important goals. The line between necessary government and bullying can be very subjective and often influenced by personal beliefs, values, and political perspectives. So back to what it means to be an advocate. An advocate is simply that it's a person or organization who helps look out for others or groups of people of best interest. The American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, they are one of those organizations that tend to help groups and individuals. They stand up for these people. A lawyer is the prime example of being an advocate. They stand up for others to obtain the best terms for that person or groups of people. Other groups that could be considered advocates just by the nature of what they do are teachers and nurses. As you probably know, the government's not always the best advocate for us. Uh, though times they can be. And so simply being an advocate is standing up for a person or groups of people who are perhaps downtrodden, the subject of ridicule, attacks on groups that are part of, perhaps a groups of has become subject to the government trying to block the fundamental rights of the person or groups of people. An advocate be in a group that's holding up for representative people or group. Like I said, like the ACLU and GLAD, for example. In general, it's always better being an advocate than a bully. An advocate is going to be more popular and provide more goodness than a bully ever will. And who might just have limited numbers of people associated with them as a result of them being bullies. But thank you once again for joining my channel. Hopefully, it gives you a better perspective on the difference between being an advocate and a bully. And hopefully, you're an advocate. You have a great rest of your day and night.